The orbital station EOS floated silently in the vast expanse of space, its metallic frame glinting faintly under the light of two suns. It was a small human colony, built to study the binary star system it orbited and serve as a waypoint for deep space missions. Life aboard the station was predictable. Days filled with routine maintenance, data collection, and occasional transmissions from Earth. For Cal Armitage, an engineer who preferred solitude over socializing, this monotony felt almost comforting. Cale was not someone who stood out. He was quiet, methodical, and often lost in thought. His colleagues described him as dependable but distant, always focused on his work rather than idle chatter. On this particular day, however, fate had other plans for him. It started during one of his scheduled maintenance checks outside the station. Clad in a bulky spacesuit, Cale floated along the exterior hull, inspecting panels for signs of wear or damage. The silence of space surrounded him, a serene yet humbling emptiness that made him feel both insignificant and alive. As he worked, his attention was drawn to a strange object drifting nearby. At first glance, it looked like debris, but as he approached, he realized it wasn't just any wreckage. It was a sleek alien vessel. The craft was unlike anything Cal had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with iridescent hues, reflecting the dual sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. Despite its beauty, it was clearly damaged. Parts of its hull were scorched, and one of its wings appeared bent at an awkward angle. Curiosity overcoming caution, Cale activated his suit's thrusters and moved closer. That's when he saw her. Inside the cockpit, slumped against the controls, was an alien figure. Her skin, smooth and pale blue, seemed to glow faintly even in the dim light. Long silver hair framed her delicate features, and though unconscious, there was an air of regality about her. Cale hesitated for a moment, unsure if approaching further would be wise. But something about her presence tugged at him, a mix of awe and concern he couldn't ignore. Carefully, Cale tapped on the glass canopy of the cockpit. When she didn't stir, he used his tools to pry it open. The sudden rush of air startled him, but he quickly stabilized himself and leaned inside. She was breathing, albeit shallowly, and her body radiated warmth despite the cold vacuum outside. Without wasting another second, Cale secured her onto a portable stretcher and began towing her back toward the station. News of the mysterious visitor spread quickly among the crew once Cale brought her aboard. Speculation ran wild. Was she a scout, a spy, or perhaps a refugee fleeing some unknown conflict? Captain Eldrin, the stern leader of the station, ordered her quarantined until they could determine her intentions. However, Cale volunteered to oversee her care, citing his role in rescuing her as reason enough to stay involved. Over the next few days, Cale spent hours by her side, monitoring her recovery. She woke up gradually, her large, luminous eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings with a mixture of confusion and wariness. Communication proved difficult at first since she spoke in melodic tones unfamiliar to Cale, but through gestures and trial-and-error exchanges using translation software, they slowly began to understand each other. Her name was Lyria Valfar, she revealed, and she hailed from the Valeth Empire, a civilization known to humanity only through distant encounters and fragmented reports. The Valeth were advanced, powerful, and notoriously reclusive. They rarely interacted with humans, and when they did, it usually ended in tension or outright hostility. Yet here was Lyria, injured and vulnerable, trusting Cale with her life. As days turned into weeks, Cale found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. There was a kindness in her gaze, a wisdom in her words that transcended their differences. She asked questions about Earth, about human customs, and about Cale himself. In return, she shared glimpses of her own world, stories of towering crystal cities, songs sung to honor the stars, and philosophies centered around harmony and balance. Despite the growing connection between them, Cale couldn't shake the feeling that their time together was fleeting. Lyria never spoke of why she crashed near the station, Nor did she mention what awaited her beyond these walls. Still, Kale chose to focus on the present, cherishing every moment spent learning from her and marveling at the wonder of their unlikely friendship. As the days passed, Kale and Lyria's interactions grew more frequent and meaningful. What began as cautious curiosity between two strangers from vastly different worlds evolved into something deeper, a mutual respect and understanding that transcended their species' boundaries. Kale found himself looking forward to their conversations, eager to learn more about her culture, while Lyria seemed equally fascinated by his stories of humanity's struggles, triumphs, and dreams. Kale often brought books and recordings from Earth to share with Lyria. He introduced her to classical music, playing symphonies by composers like Beethoven and Tchaikovsky through a small audio device. Her reaction was one of pure wonder. She closed her eyes, letting the melodies wash over her, occasionally humming along in harmonies that sounded otherworldly yet strangely familiar. "Your kind creates such beauty," she said one day, her voice soft but filled with admiration. "It makes me think perhaps we are not so different after all." In return, Lyria taught Kale about the Vailith way of life. She explained how her people revered stars as sacred entities, believing they were ancient beings who watched over the universe. To the Vailith, every star had a story, and every constellation told a tale of creation, loss, or hope. One evening, when the station rotated to face the binary suns, Lyria pointed out patterns in the light, weaving a poetic narrative about twin stars destined to orbit each other for eternity. Kale listened intently, captivated not just by the story itself, but by the passion in her voice. Their bond deepened further when Lyria shared glimpses of her art. Using a tablet borrowed from Kale, she sketched intricate designs inspired by her homeworld, crystalline structures shimmering with colors that seemed to shift depending on the angle of view. Some depicted sprawling cities bathed in golden light, while others portrayed serene landscapes dotted with glowing flora. Kale marveled at her creativity, asking questions about the meaning behind each piece. In response, Lyria spoke of balance, the delicate harmony between nature and technology that defined Vailith society. Despite these moments of connection, there was an unspoken tension hanging over them. The reality of their situation weighed heavily on both of them. Lyria's presence aboard the station remained a secret known only to Kale and Captain Eldrin, though rumors had begun to circulate among the crew. Whispers of an alien ambassador staying in the repair bay reached even the lowest-ranking technicians, sparking both intrigue and unease. Captain Eldrin, ever vigilant, reminded Kale repeatedly of the risks involved. "You're treading dangerous ground," he warned during one of their private meetings. "The last thing we need is for word of this to reach Earth, or worse, the Vailith themselves. Do you understand what's at stake?" Kale nodded, though his resolve didn't waver. "I know it's risky," he replied firmly, "but she's not a threat. She's different. She wants peace, not conflict." Eldrin sighed, rubbing his temples. "Even if that's true, you can't trust her completely. You don't know what she's hiding, or why she's here." Kale didn't argue further, but he couldn't bring himself to distance from Lyria. Every time he looked into her luminous eyes, he saw sincerity, vulnerability, and a longing for understanding that mirrored his own. How could someone so gentle be a danger? Meanwhile, Lyria confided in Kale about her growing concern for her safety. "If my people discover I am here," she admitted one night, her voice tinged with worry, "they will come for me, and they will not hesitate to harm anyone who stands in their way." Kale frowned, gripping the edge of the table where they sat. "Why would they do that? You're their princess. You said so yourself." Lyria hesitated before responding, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Not all leaders rule with wisdom or compassion," she said quietly. "My father, he believes strength comes from domination. He seeks to expand our empire, even if it means subjugating weaker species. I cannot agree with his methods, which is why." She trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Kale leaned closer, his expression earnest. "Which is why you left." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I hope to find allies, those who might help change his mind, or at least offer refuge until I can make my case. But now, she gestured around the room, implying the fragile sanctuary the station provided. I fear my time here is limited. Moved by her honesty, Cale placed a hand over hers. You're not alone, he assured her. Whatever happens, I'll do everything I can to protect you. His words caught her off guard. For a moment, she simply stared at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. Finding none, she smiled faintly, gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you, Cale, she whispered. I never expected kindness like yours. Unbeknownst to either of them, their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. A young technician named Mara, assigned to monitor the repair base systems, had been observing their interactions. Initially curious, she soon became suspicious, especially after overhearing fragments of their conversations. Believing she had uncovered something important, Mara decided to report her findings to Captain Eldrin. When Eldrin confronted Cale about the breach in protocol, tensions flared. You've been spending too much time with her, Eldrin snapped. This isn't just about friendship anymore. It's jeopardizing the entire station. Cale stood his ground, refusing to back down. She's not our enemy, he insisted. If anything, she's proof that peace is possible. Don't you see that? Eldrin's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving Cale standing alone in the corridor. Though frustrated, Cale knew he couldn't give up, not when so much depended on bridging the gap between their worlds. That night, as Cale returned to the repair bay, he found Lyria gazing out the window at the swirling stars. Sensing his presence, she turned to face him, her expression softening. Will they send me away? She asked softly. Cale shook his head. Not if I have anything to say about it. For the first time since arriving, Lyria allowed herself to believe in the possibility of hope, a feeling made stronger by the quiet determination of the man standing beside her. The fragile balance Cale and Lyria had built began to crack under the weight of secrets neither could ignore any longer. While their bond continued to grow stronger with each passing day, the shadows of danger loomed closer than either of them realized. For Lyria, the truth about her past and her reasons for fleeing was becoming harder to conceal. And for Cale, the growing tension aboard the station made it clear that their time together was running out. One evening, as they sat in the dimly lit repair bay sharing stories, Lyria hesitated before speaking. Her usual calm demeanor faltered slightly, replaced by an uncharacteristic nervousness. Cale, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. There is something I must tell you. Cale leaned forward, his brow furrowing with concern. What is it? He asked gently. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what she was about to reveal. I am not just a traveler seeking refuge, she admitted. I am a dissident. My father, Emperor Valthar, rules our empire with an iron grip. He believes conquest is the only path to greatness, and he has ordered invasions against countless species, including yours. Cale's eyes widened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. I fled because I could no longer stand by while innocent lives were destroyed, she explained, her voice trembling with emotion. I hope to find allies who might help me challenge his rule, or at least slow his expansionist ambitions. But now, she paused, looking down at her hands. Now I fear my escape has put everyone here in grave danger. Cale processed her words carefully, his mind racing. The image of Lyria as a rebel fighting for peace clashed sharply with the regal yet gentle woman sitting before him. Yet, somehow, it made perfect sense. Everything about her, the quiet strength, the longing for understanding, the determination to do what was right, aligned perfectly with this revelation. You're risking everything, Cale said finally, his tone filled with admiration. Why would you go against your own people like this? It must have been terrifying. Lyria nodded slowly. It was, she confessed. But I believe there is another way. a future where species coexist without fear or oppression. That belief gives me courage, even when all seems lost. Her vulnerability touched Cal deeply. Reaching out, he placed a reassuring hand on hers. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." Though Lyria didn't fully understand why Cal felt so compelled to protect her, she couldn't deny the warmth his words brought her. For the first time since leaving her home, she felt a glimmer of hope, not just for herself, but for the galaxy at large. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation was being monitored. Mara, the young technician who had grown increasingly suspicious of Lyria, had secretly installed recording devices in the repair bay. Believing she had uncovered evidence of a potential threat, she forwarded the audio files to Captain Eldrin. When Eldrin listened to the recordings, his expression darkened. The implications were staggering. Lyria wasn't merely a refugee. She was a political fugitive whose presence could draw the wrath of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Worse still, Cal's involvement suggested a level of emotional attachment that clouded his judgment. Summoning Cal to his office, Eldrin wasted no time getting to the point. "Do you realize what you've done?" he demanded, slamming the playback device onto his desk. "This isn't some harmless cultural exchange. It's a security breach of monumental proportions." Cal stood firm, though his heart pounded in his chest. "With respect, sir, you're missing the bigger picture," he argued. "Lyria isn't here to harm us. She opposes her father's violent policies. If anything, she's trying to prevent a war." Eldrin shook his head, frustration etched across his face. "Intentions don't matter when entire fleets are involved," he shot back. "If the Vailith discover she's here, they won't hesitate to attack. Do you want to be responsible for putting every person on this station in jeopardy?" Cal clenched his fists, struggling to keep his composure. "And what's the alternative? Hand her over to them. Condemn her to whatever fate awaits her back home. Is that the kind of humanity you want to represent?" For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Finally, Eldrin sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm not saying we abandon her," he said reluctantly, "but we need to tread carefully. From now on, your interactions with her will be strictly supervised. No more private meetings, not until we figure out how to handle this situation." Though disappointed, Cal knew arguing further would only make matters worse. He nodded stiffly and left the room, his thoughts swirling with uncertainty. Back in the repair bay, Lyria sensed something was wrong the moment Cal returned. His shoulders were tense, and his usually warm smile was absent. "What happened?" she asked, standing up to meet him. Cal hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Captain Eldrin knows about you," he admitted. "He's worried. If your people find out you're here, they might come after you. And us." Lyria's expression hardened, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "I feared this would happen," she murmured. "Perhaps it is best if I leave. I cannot ask you to risk everything for me." "No," Cal said firmly, stepping closer. "Running away won't solve anything. We need to think of another way, something that keeps you safe without endangering the station." Before they could discuss further, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red warning lights flashed as automated voices announced an unidentified vessel approaching the station. Rushing to the nearest viewport, Cal and Lyria watched in stunned silence as a sleek, ominous ship emerged from the void. Its design bore unmistakable similarities to Lyria's damaged craft. But this one was intact, bristling with weapons, and flanked by smaller escorts. "They found me," Lyria whispered, her voice hollow with dread. Cal turned to her, determination blazing in his eyes. "Then we fight for you," he declared. "Together." As the station prepared for the worst, Cal and Lyria exchanged a long, meaningful glance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain. Their bond had become unbreakable. The arrival of the Vailith warship sent shockwaves through the station. Panic rippled among the crew as Captain Eldrin scrambled to prepare for the worst. Emergency protocols were activated, bulkheads sealed, and defensive systems brought online. Though everyone knew they stood little chance against an empire renowned for its technological superiority. The tension was palpable, with technicians rushing to their stations and murmurs of fear spreading like wildfire. For Cal and Lyria, however, the chaos outside only heightened the intensity of their private moment in the repair bay. Standing side by side at the viewport, they watched the massive alien vessel loom closer, its sleek silhouette casting a shadow over the fragile orbital station. Lyria's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the window frame, her luminous eyes reflecting both dread and resolve. "They've come for me," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the hum of alarms. "I should have known my father wouldn't let me escape so easily." Cale turned to face her, his expression fierce despite the gravity of the situation. "You're not going anywhere," he insisted, not without a fight. Lyria looked at him, her gaze searching his face for any sign of doubt. Instead, she found unwavering determination, a look that made her heart ache with gratitude, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You don't owe me anything. You could walk away right now and save yourself." Cale shook his head, stepping closer until there was barely any space between them. "Because I can't imagine a world where I didn't try to protect you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "And because—" he hesitated, swallowing hard as if struggling to find the right words. "Because what?" Lyria prompted, her breath catching in her throat. "Because I've loved you, for years," Cale blurted out, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment even as his eyes locked onto hers. Lyria froze, stunned by his confession. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, all she could do was stare at him in disbelief. "Years?" she echoed, her voice barely a whisper. "But we've only known each other for weeks." "I know," Cale admitted, running a hand through his hair nervously. "It doesn't make sense, does it? But from the first time I saw you, helpless in that cockpit, I felt connected to you, like I'd been waiting for you without even realizing it. These past few weeks have only made that feeling stronger. I never expected to feel this way about anyone, let alone someone like you. But here we are." Lyria's mind raced as she processed his words. She had always assumed Cal's kindness stemmed from compassion or duty, not something as profound as love. Yet, looking into his earnest eyes, she realized how genuine his feelings were. It was overwhelming, terrifying even, but also strangely beautiful. "You never expected your words," she murmured, repeating his earlier phrase. A small, bittersweet smile tugged at her lips. "Neither did I. Not from someone like you." Cale frowned slightly, unsure if her comment was meant as praise or criticism. "Someone like me?" he asked cautiously. "A human," Lyria clarified, her tone softening. "One who sees beyond our differences, one who believes in hope when others see only division. You've shown me that love transcends species, borders, and fears. That is something I will carry with me forever." Her words struck Cal deeply, filling him with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride because he had somehow managed to touch her heart. Sorrow because their circumstances left no room for a happy ending. Before either of them could say more, the intercom crackled to life. Captain Eldrin's voice rang out across the station, commanding everyone to report to designated safe zones. "This isn't over yet," Eldrin added grimly. "Stay alert. And remember, survival comes first." Cale glanced toward the door, torn between staying with Lyria and reporting to his post. Sensing his hesitation, Lyria placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Go," she urged. "Do what you must. I'll be fine." Reluctantly, Cale nodded and turned to leave. But before he reached the exit, he stopped and looked back at her one last time. "Whatever happens next," he said firmly, "just know I meant every word." Lyria smiled faintly, though tears glistened in her eyes. "As did I," she whispered, too softly for him to hear. Meanwhile, Captain Eldrin convened an emergency meeting with his senior staff to discuss their options. With the Valeth fleet closing in, Diplomacy seemed like their only viable course of action, but even that was fraught with risk. Eldrin proposed sending a transmission to the approaching ships, offering to negotiate Lyria's return in exchange for assurances of non-aggression. When Kale heard the plan, his blood ran cold. "You can't just hand her over," he protested, slamming his fist on the table. "She's done nothing wrong. If anything, she's trying to stop a war." Eldrin fixed him with a stern glare. "And what do you suggest we do instead?" He countered. "Fight them. We'd be obliterated within minutes. Or maybe you think we should hide her indefinitely while risking everyone else's lives." Kale clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He wanted to argue further, but deep down, he knew Eldrin was right. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Still, the thought of betraying Lyria after everything they'd shared felt unbearable. As the debate raged on, Mara, the technician who had reported Lyria's presence, spoke up hesitantly. What if we used her knowledge against them?" she suggested. "She knows their weaknesses better than anyone. Maybe she can help us buy some time." All eyes turned to Kel, who hesitated before nodding slowly. "It's worth a shot," he agreed. "But only if she agrees to it. We can't force her into anything." With no other options on the table, Eldrin reluctantly gave the green light to approach Lyria. When Kale relayed the plan to her later, she listened intently, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed and nodded. "If it means protecting this station, and perhaps planting a seed of change among my people, then I will do whatever it takes," she said resolutely. Her bravery inspired Kale, reigniting his determination to stand by her side no matter the cost. As they prepared to face the looming threat together, their shared resolve became a beacon of hope in an otherwise bleak situation. Little did they know, their actions would soon ripple far beyond the confines of the station, setting events in motion that neither humanity nor the Vailith Empire could have anticipated. The clock was ticking. With the Vailith fleet now within striking distance, every second felt like an eternity aboard the orbital station Eos. Kale and Lyria worked tirelessly alongside Captain Eldrin and a small team of trusted crew members to devise a strategy that might give them a fighting chance, or at least buy enough time for reinforcements from Earth to arrive. Though hope seemed slim, desperation fueled their determination. Lyria's knowledge of her people's technology proved invaluable. She revealed that Vailith ships relied heavily on advanced energy matrices to power both propulsion and weaponry. If these systems could be disrupted, even temporarily, it would leave the fleet vulnerable. An electromagnetic pulse, EMP, could disable their systems, she explained during one of their hasty planning sessions in the command center. But generating a pulse strong enough to affect an entire fleet requires significant resources and precise targeting. Kale immediately thought of the experimental EMP generator stored in the station's research lab. Designed as a contingency measure against hostile forces, the device had never been tested in real-world conditions. Still, it was their best shot. "We'll need to modify it to focus the pulse outward," he said, sketching out a rough diagram on a nearby console. "Otherwise, we risk disabling our own systems too." Captain Eldrin nodded approvingly, but remained cautious. "Even if we can get the EMP operational, deploying it won't be easy," he pointed out. "Their sensors will detect any unusual activity near the station. We'd need someone to manually activate the device while evading detection." "I'll do it," Kale volunteered without hesitation. "No," Lyria interjected sharply, her voice laced with concern. "It's far too dangerous. I should go. I know how their ships operate, and I'm less likely to raise suspicion. And what happens if they recognize you?" Kale countered, his tone firm yet gentle. "They're here for you, Lyria. You can't risk yourself like that." Before their argument could escalate further, Eldrin stepped in. "Enough," he said firmly. "Arguing won't solve anything. We don't have time for this." Turning to Kale, he added, "You've made your case, but remember, this isn't just about bravery. It's about survival. If something goes wrong, we'll lose more than just one person." Though reluctant, Lyria conceded. "Fine," she said softly, though her eyes betrayed her unease. "But promise me you'll be careful." Cale gave her a reassuring smile, though his heart raced at the enormity of what lay ahead. "I promise," he replied. Preparations moved quickly. The engineering team worked around the clock to recalibrate the EMP generator, while Cale and Lyria collaborated on mapping out the optimal deployment location. Using data provided by Lyria, they identified a blind spot in the Valeth fleet's sensor grid, a narrow corridor where the pulse could be triggered without immediate detection. As the final adjustments were completed, Cale suited up in preparation for the mission. Watching him from across the room, Lyria struggled to keep her emotions in check. "This feels wrong," she murmured, her voice trembling. "Sending you into danger because of me." "You're not sending me anywhere," Cale interrupted gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm choosing this. For you, for the station, and for everyone who believes in a better future. Trust me, okay?" Tears welled up in Lyria's eyes, but she nodded silently, unable to find the words to express how much his courage meant to her. Before departing, Cale met briefly with Captain Eldrin, who handed him a small communicator. "Stay in contact," Eldrin instructed. "If things go south, we'll extract you immediately. No questions asked." "Understood," Cale replied, his tone steady despite the knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. The journey to the designated deployment zone was fraught with tension. Guided by Lyria's coordinates, Cale navigated through the station's exterior maintenance tunnels, avoiding areas visible to the Valeth fleet. His suit's thrusters hummed softly as he floated toward the edge of the station, the vast emptiness of space stretching endlessly around him. Reaching the blind spot, Cale anchored himself to the hull and began setting up the EMP generator. Each step of the process required precision and calm under pressure, qualities Cale hadn't realized he possessed until now. As he worked, he couldn't help but think of Lyria, her unwavering strength, her belief in peace, and the way she had changed his life in such a short time. Finally, everything was ready. Taking a deep breath, Cale activated the countdown sequence. The device emitted a low hum, its energy building steadily. Through his visor, he watched as the Valeth fleet loomed ominously in the distance, their ships glowing faintly against the backdrop of stars. Then, without warning, alarms blared inside his helmet. "Cale, they've spotted you." Lyria's panicked voice crackled over the communicator. "Get out of there now." "It's too late to abort," Cale replied, his voice calm but resolute. "The pulse is already underway." "No," Lyria cried, her anguish cutting through the static. "Please, don't." Her plea was cut short as the EMP detonated, releasing a brilliant flash of light that illuminated the void. For a brief moment, Cale shielded his eyes, bracing for the worst. When the glare subsided, he looked up to see the Valeth fleet drifting powerless, their once mighty vessels reduced to silent silhouettes. Back on the station, cheers erupted among the crew as news of the successful operation spread. But Lyria stood frozen in place, clutching the communicator tightly. Her relief was tempered by fear that Cale might not return unscathed. Minutes later, his voice came through again, shaky but alive. "Mission accomplished," he reported, exhaustion evident in his tone. "Heading back now." Lyria exhaled shakily, tears streaming down her face. Against all odds, they had succeeded, but the cost of their victory weighed heavily on her heart. As Cale made his way back to the station, battered but triumphant, he allowed himself a small smile. They had taken a stand, not just against tyranny, but for the possibility of a brighter future. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Together, they had proven that even in the darkest moments, hope could shine brightest. The aftermath of the EMP strike left the station in a state of cautious relief. The Valeth fleet, rendered powerless and adrift, began retreating toward the edge of the system, a temporary victory that bought precious time for the crew of EOS. Yet the celebration was muted. Everyone knew this reprieve wouldn't last forever. The Emperor's forces would regroup, and when they returned, their vengeance would be swift and merciless. For Cal and Lyria, the hours following the operation were a blur of exhaustion and emotion. Cal had returned safely, much to Lyria's immense relief, but the strain of his mission lingered in the form of dark circles under his eyes and a faint tremor in his hands. Despite his fatigue, he refused to rest until he ensured Lyria was safe. Together, they retreated to the repair bay, seeking solace away from the chaos gripping the rest of the station. "You shouldn't have done it," Lyria said finally, breaking the silence between them. Her voice was soft, but carried an undercurrent of frustration. "You risked your life. For me. For all of this. What if something had gone wrong?" Cale looked at her, his expression unwavering despite her reproach. "And what if I hadn't acted? Would you have been able to live with yourself, knowing I stood by while others suffered because of your father's greed?" Lyria opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. She knew he was right. His actions had saved countless lives, including hers, but that knowledge didn't ease the guilt gnawing at her heart. Instead, she turned her gaze to the viewport, watching the distant stars shimmer against the blackness of space. "I never wanted any of this," she admitted quietly. "When I left my homeworld, I thought I could escape, to find allies who might help me change things without bloodshed. But now, look at what's happened. Because of me, innocent people are caught in the crossfire." Cale moved closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This isn't your fault," he said firmly. "Your father chose aggression over peace long before you were born. You're trying to fix what he broke. That takes courage most people don't have." Lyria shook her head, tears welling up in her luminous eyes. "Courage or foolishness? I don't even know anymore." "Both," Cale replied with a wry smile. "But sometimes that's exactly what the galaxy needs." His words brought a small, bittersweet smile to her lips. For a moment, they simply sat together in companionable silence, drawing strength from each other's presence. Meanwhile, Captain Eldrin convened another emergency meeting to assess their next steps. While the EMP had neutralized the immediate threat, the station remained vulnerable. Reinforcements from Earth were still days away, and there was no guarantee they'd arrive in time to fend off another attack. Worse yet, word of Lyria's defection had likely reached the Violet Emperor by now, making her a symbol of rebellion and a target for retaliation. "We can't keep hiding her," Eldrin stated bluntly during the meeting. "If we're going to survive this, we need to change the narrative. Make humanity appear as mediators rather than accomplices." "What are you suggesting?" one of the senior officers asked cautiously. "A broadcast," Eldrin replied. "We send a message directly to the Violet Empire, not just to explain our actions, but to appeal for dialogue. If Princess Lyria truly believes in peace, then let her speak for herself. Let the galaxy see that not all humans are enemies, and not all Violet are oppressors." Though controversial, the idea gained traction among the leadership team. It was risky, yes, but it also offered a glimmer of hope. Cale supported the plan wholeheartedly, seeing it as a chance to amplify Lyria's message of unity and understanding. When he presented the proposal to her later, however, she hesitated. "They'll call me a traitor," she said, her voice tinged with fear. "My own people will see me as nothing more than a coward who abandoned them." "Or they'll see you as someone brave enough to stand up for what's right," Cale countered gently. "You've already inspired so many, including me. Imagine what hearing your voice could do for others who feel trapped under your father's rule." After a long pause, Lyria nodded slowly. "All right," she agreed, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. "If this is the only way to protect the station, and perhaps spark change, I'll do it." The broadcast was scheduled for the following day. As preparations got underway, Lyria worked closely with Cale and the communications team to craft her message, drawing upon everything she had learned about humanity and everything she hoped for her own species. She poured her heart into every word. "To the people of the Violet Empire, And to all beings across the stars, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. I am Lyria Valfar, daughter of Emperor Valfar. Though I stand accused of betrayal, I speak today not out of defiance, but out of love for my people, for the galaxy, and for the future we deserve. She went on to describe her vision of coexistence, emphasizing the beauty of diversity and the strength found in unity. She acknowledged the pain caused by her father's policies, but urged her listeners to imagine a different path, one where compassion replaced conquest. As the transmission concluded, an eerie quiet settled over the station. No one knew how the Valith would respond, nor whether the message would reach its intended audience. All they could do was wait and hope. Hours later, reports began trickling in. Some factions within the Empire denounced Lyria as a traitor, calling for her immediate capture. Others, however, expressed cautious support, praising her courage and echoing her calls for reform. Among these dissenting voices was Admiral Saren, a high-ranking officer known for his moderate views. In a bold move, he publicly declared his allegiance to Lyria's cause, urging the Emperor to reconsider his expansionist agenda. Though far from victory, the ripple effects of Lyria's speech gave rise to a fragile optimism. Back aboard Eos, Kale watched as Lyria read through the mixed reactions, pride swelling in his chest. You've started something incredible, he told her softly. She smiled faintly, leaning into his embrace. We've started something, she corrected. Together. In that moment, surrounded by uncertainty yet buoyed by shared purpose, they found solace in the knowledge that love and hope could endure even in the face of war. Weeks turned into months, and the fragile hope sparked by Lyria's broadcast began to take root, not just aboard Eos, but across the galaxy. The message she had delivered resonated far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. While the Valith Emperor doubled down on his aggressive rhetoric, dissent within the Empire grew louder and more organized. Admiral Saren emerged as a key figure in this movement, rallying like-minded officers and citizens who believed in Lyria's vision of peace and coexistence. For Kale and Lyria, life aboard the station became a delicate balancing act. They worked tirelessly alongside Captain Eldrin and the crew to maintain their fragile neutrality, even as tensions between humanity and the Valith Empire simmered dangerously close to boiling over. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, there were moments of quiet joy, moments when they allowed themselves to dream of a future where their love wasn't overshadowed by fear or conflict. Lyria's recovery from her injuries progressed steadily, though scars both physical and emotional remained. She spent much of her time documenting her experiences, compiling them into a series of essays and sketches that captured her journey. From fleeing her homeworld to finding refuge among humans, Kale encouraged her every step of the way, marveling at how her art brought light to even the darkest corners of their reality. One evening, as they sat together in the repair bay watching the binary suns dip below the horizon, Lyria turned to Kale with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think it's possible?" she asked softly. "A world where species like ours can truly live side by side?" Kale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gazed out at the stars, letting the vastness of space remind him of all the possibilities it held. "I don't know," he admitted finally, "but I do know one thing. If we stop believing it's possible, then it never will be." His words brought a small smile to Lyria's face. "You always have a way of making me feel hopeful," she said, her voice tinged with affection. "And you have a way of making me believe in something bigger than myself," Kale replied, reaching for her hand. As the weeks passed, the station transformed into an unlikely hub for diplomacy. Representatives from various human colonies, along with sympathetic factions from the Valith Empire, began arriving to discuss potential solutions to the ongoing crisis. Negotiations were fraught with tension, but progress was undeniable. Slowly, painfully, bridges were being built, bridges that might one day span the divide between two vastly different civilizations. Lyria played a pivotal role in these discussions, serving as both mediator and advocate. Her ability to see perspectives from both sides earned her respect among delegates, while her unwavering commitment to peace inspired those around her. For Kale, watching her navigate such complex terrain filled him with immense pride and a deep sense of gratitude for having met her. Yet, not everyone welcomed this newfound collaboration. Hardliners on both sides viewed the talks with suspicion, accusing participants of betrayal or weakness. Sabotage attempts became increasingly frequent, forcing the station's security team to remain vigilant at all times. Despite these challenges, Captain Eldrin refused to back down. "If we give up now," he told his crew during one particularly tense briefing, "then everything we've fought for means nothing." Kale echoed this sentiment privately to Lyria. "We've come too far to turn back," he said firmly. "No matter what happens next, we'll keep fighting, for each other and for the future." She nodded, her resolve matching his own. "Together," she added simply. Months later, the fruits of their efforts began to materialize. A tentative truce was signed between humanity and the Vailith Empire, brokered largely through Lyria's influence and Admiral Siren's growing coalition. Though far from perfect, the agreement marked a significant step toward lasting peace. Key provisions included shared access to certain star systems, joint scientific research initiatives, and the establishment of neutral zones where representatives from both sides could meet freely. The signing ceremony took place aboard Eos, symbolizing the station's role as a beacon of unity. As Lyria stood beside Kale during the proceedings, her heart swelled with emotion. This moment, the culmination of so many sacrifices and struggles, was proof that change was possible, even in the face of overwhelming odds. When the ceremony concluded, applause erupted throughout the station. Delegates from both species mingled cautiously, exchanging greetings and gestures of goodwill. It was a small beginning, but one filled with promise. Later that night, Kale and Lyria found themselves alone once more in the repair bay. The hum of the station's systems provided a soothing backdrop as they reflected on everything they'd been through, and everything still to come. "I never imagined I'd see this day," Lyria confessed, leaning against Kale's shoulder. "That my father would listen. That anyone would listen." "It's not over yet," Kale reminded her gently. "There's still work to be done. But tonight, let yourself celebrate. You deserve it." Tears welled up in Lyria's eyes, though they were tears of happiness this time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Kale smiled, brushing a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. "Don't thank me," he said softly. "We did this together." As they gazed out at the stars shining brightly against the endless expanse of space, Kale leaned closer and murmured the words he'd spoken months ago, the words that had changed everything. "I've loved you for years." This time, Lyria smiled fully, her luminous eyes reflecting the light of the binary suns. "And I've loved you," she replied, her voice steady and sure, "for lifetimes." In that moment, surrounded by the infinite beauty of the cosmos, they knew their bond transcended not just species, but time itself. Together, they had proven that love and hope could overcome even the greatest divides, a testament to the power of unity in a fractured universe. And as the galaxy slowly awakened to the possibility of a brighter future, Kale and Lyria stood ready to guide it toward the dawn they had always dreamed of.